I owed them $78 and they were going to steal my home and auction it off to the highest bidder. Guys, what are we doing here? How are we living when our elderly people are having to borrow money to pay taxes on their property?
Stoney Ridge Farm. Woo! All right.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Stoney Ridge Farm. Today's video is going to make you mad. It made me mad and it's going to make you mad. It is very upsetting and I want to have a discussion, an open discussion board with you guys. Please post as many comments as you'd like and please share this. I experienced something super heartbreaking that really hit home to me. So yesterday I went over to pay my property taxes. The property taxes on my place here are relatively inexpensive compared to the rest of the country. They're about $3,800 on this farm. $3,800 of rent that I have to pay to the county in order to live here and not go to jail or not have my land stolen from the county or by the county. I'm not pleased about that. I don't think anybody is pleased about property taxes, and I think if you hide your property taxes in escrow, meaning if you make your house payment and your property taxes are kind of hidden from you there in escrow, I think every one of us has probably experienced a hike in our property taxes in the last little bit. My property value went up 60%. 60%. The land here that we're standing on went up 60% last year at the most recent tax assessment. That hits home hard. I don't get 60% more income off of the land. I don't get 60% more anything from the county, but I've got to pay 60% more property taxes. Now they offset that property tax by decreasing the rate at which we paid taxes, but increasing the value. And when I had the discussion with the lady in the tax office, she said, well, hopefully values will come back down. Post a comment there, post a comment. Tell me what you think. Our property value is gonna go back down. Is this year's property tax, is it gonna be less than next year's? No, it's not gonna be less than next year's. I ran into a gentleman who was 82 years old in the parking lot at the tax office. He was driving a 1980 C10 square body Chevy pickup that was rusty and crusty, and to me, it was just gold. I thought that truck was so cool. So I went up and I struck up a conversation because a man loves to talk about his truck. So I walked up to him and I said, hey man, gosh, that's a really nice truck you got there. He said, well, it's all right. You know, I've had it for a few years. I bought it from the original owner. He started telling me the story of his truck and that was really cool. And I said, man, you know, I would love to have a truck like that. He said, well, it's my only vehicle. I said, the 1980 Chevrolet pickup, this square body truck is your only vehicle? He said, yeah, it's my only vehicle and I could barely afford it. And I said, well, what'd you pay for that thing? He said, well, I paid about, $1,200 to $1,500 about 4 years ago, something like that. It was out in my neighbor's barn and my truck broke down and I couldn't fix it and needed a new engine. So I called over there and asked them if they'd sell it to me, and they did. And they sold it to me for, I believe he said it was like $1,400. This man was in his 80s. He'd been driving that old pickup truck that was probably tax assessed value worth about $8. And I just kept on talking with him a little bit. And I said, man, gosh, that's your only vehicle. Yeah, I wonder what it would take to buy that truck. Would you be interested in selling it? Maybe I could give you enough for it. You could buy a newer vehicle. He said, man, let me tell you, I bought my house in 1960 for $9,000. And I just got my tax assessment back. He's got a house and a few acres. So I just got my tax assessment back. This new tax assessment, and my taxes were over $2,000. Over $2,000. So you think about it, this man bought his house for, let's just say an average around here, probably $8,000 back in like 1960, 61, 62, something like that. This man has paid taxes on that piece of property since the 60s and has probably paid for his property 5 times over. Paying taxes on his property. If he would have known when he bought that property back in the 60s, him and his wife, and he said his wife was in poor health, if he had known that he would have had to pay the government probably 5 times what it's worth in the life of having that piece of property, would he have bought it? So we got to talking just a little bit more, and I was telling him I'm griping about paying taxes. I don't like paying taxes. You don't like paying taxes. Nobody likes paying taxes. I don't understand what burden this piece of property poses to the taxpayers of my county. I just don't understand it. I honestly think it's taxation without representation. I think it's wrong. This man went on to tell me, and this was very heartbreaking, and he didn't think that his pickup truck was worth more than about $2,000. I offered him 5,000 bucks on the spot for it. I just said, look, man, I'd love to have that truck. I think it's cool. It's got some rust holes in it, dents in the door, whatever. But I could tell he needed a newer vehicle. He needed something, and he needed enough money to go buy something that would probably be pretty decent. Did it need to be a pickup truck? Probably not, but he could probably go pick up a little Nissan pickup with 100,000 miles on it and drive that thing for the rest of his life. This man had to go borrow money. And this is what really broke my heart. This man's in his 80s. His wife is in poor health. He's owned his house since the early 1960s. And he had to go borrow. His taxes went up $750. He had to go borrow $1,000 to pay his property tax. A man in his 80s, been living in the county for that many years, probably paid for his property and his house 2 to 3 to 4 times over what he paid for it, back to the county. And this man had to take out a loan to pay his property taxes. He's worked hard all of his life. You could tell he was just a very nice individual, just a very meek individual, not anybody that was living high on the hog, not anybody, just the average guy, an average guy. In his 80s, wife having health problems, had to borrow money to pay his taxes so that the government wouldn't put a tax lien on his property and take his property away. After he's paid the government enough money to pay for his property 2 to 4 times over, this 82-year-old man, and I want y'all to share your opinions here, 80-ish-year-old man, I want your opinions. Worked hard all his life, driving a $1,000 pickup truck, rusty and falling apart, barely running, the windows won't go up and down. I meet him in the parking lot. He's the kindest man that you'll ever meet. And he had to borrow money to pay his property taxes so that the government didn't come in and steal his property. This begs a very, very serious question. Do we actually own anything? And guys, comment. Share your stories with me. Tell me how much your taxes went up this year. This inflation that we're experiencing in our country right now is costing us more in the grocery store. It's costing us more in the tax office. It's costing us more to buy a home. Most people can't afford a home. It's way cheaper to rent now. It's costing us more and more and more and more. And as a society, we are literally being taxed to death. You are taxed on the money that you earn. You are taxed on the money that you spend with sales tax. You are taxed on the food that you buy for prepared food tax. You are taxed on the things that you already own, the things that you bought with the money that you have paid taxes on. You were taxed on that. I think this man deserves a break. It broke my heart. It absolutely broke my heart to think of being a man in my 80s in some point in my life and not having the means, being on a fixed income, living off of Social Security, Medicare, health care. This man is one hop, skip, and a jump away from his entire everything he's ever owned being taken away from him by the county if he doesn't pay his taxes. Is this any way to treat our elderly? Is this any way for a citizen of this country, of this state, I'm in North Carolina, of this county, to live? in fear that somebody's going to take it away from you. You earn money and you live in fear that if you don't pay the right amount of income tax, that you're going to go to jail. I love my country. I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force. I want you guys to share your opinions. I love my county. I love my state. I love my farm. I love where I live. But I don't want to be 82 years old and having paid my county enough money to it, paid for my place 4 times over, and have the threat looming over my head all the time that if I don't pay the taxes, the property taxes on my piece of land, that they could come right in here, stick a sign on the gate, and auction this place off on the courthouse steps. How horrible is that? Guys, this is not my usual type of video, but it just broke my heart to meet that gentleman and find out that the man had to take out a loan in his 80s, had to loan money, borrow money, had to borrow money to pay his taxes, his government tithing. This just made me mad to no end. As I walked through the door in the tax office, I watched all the people that were lined up. They were all lined up. There's probably 30 or 40 people in there lined up to pay their tithing to the government so that the government doesn't take their place and auction it off. I have been a victim of the government auctioning my property off in my past. There was a notice on a mobile home that I used to own stuck on the door that there would be an auction and this home would be auctioned off tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I just noticed it. They put it on the day before and I was young. I was 19 years old, just in the military. Had no idea about property taxes, didn't know I'd have to pay property taxes. I owed the government 2 years back property taxes on a 1976 mobile home. I owed them $78 and they were going to steal my home and auction it off to the highest bidder. Guys, what are we doing here? How are we living when our elderly people are having to borrow money to pay taxes on their property? It's horrible, absolutely horrible. This is just me having a conversation with you guys, discussing life in general, and how on earth is that right? In any way, in any fashion, how is that ever going to be right in this society to take our elderly and push them out of their property and make them get a loan to pay the G-man so that they can keep their home? Home's paid for. Can he even afford to have insurance on his house? Living on a fixed income. It's horrible, guys. It's horrible. The biggest fear that I have in my life is being more poor the day I quit working and retire than I was the day that I started. And let me tell you something. Most of America is experiencing that. They are. The dollar you save today in your bank account is only going to be worth 10 cents by the time you retire. So we better think and we better be smart. Who really owns the Stoney Ridge farm? Who really owns your car? Who really owns your house? Who really owns anything? It's all this close to being taken away from you. It's not fair. It's not right. Guys, post comments down there. Tell me what you think. I was just down here by the pond and it was eating at me and I thought I'd talk to you about it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Hit that like button. We hope to see you in the next video here on the Stoney Ridge.